2020 at the headquarters of the African Commission in Banjul, Republic of the Gambia. These are the proceedings of the virtual 67th ordinary session of the African Commission. Your Excellency, Professor Sarah Anyang Agbo, Commissioner for Human Resources, Science, Technology of the African Union Commission, representing His Excellency, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Honorable Solomon Deso, Chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Honorable Dauda Jallow, Attorney General and Minister of Justice of the Republic of the Gambia. Excellencies, Ministers of State Parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Honorable Justice Sylvan Ore, President of the African Court on Human and People's Rights. Honorable Justice Maria Mapani Kawimbe, Deputy Rapporteur of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. Honorable Vice Chairperson and Commissioners of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Dr. Elasto Mugwadi, Chairperson of the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission and Vice Chairperson of the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions. Mrs. Hannah Foster, Executive Director of the African Center for Democracy and Human Rights Studies, spokesperson of the NGO Forum. Distinguished delegates of state parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Representatives of national human rights institutions, representatives of international organizations, representatives of non-governmental organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome you to the opening ceremony of the 67th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. My name is Lindiwe Kumalo, the Acting Executive Secretary of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and I will take you through the order of proceedings shortly. Kindly permit me at this point to request Your Excellencies, representatives of state parties, African Union organs, and all organizations here present to assume a solemn posture for the observance of the African Union anthem. Thank you. In a short while, I will take you through the order of proceedings. But before I do so, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, kindly permit me to share the following guidelines with you on how to make this virtual meeting on the Zoom platform more effective and smooth flowing. First, may I kindly request all distinguished panelists to ensure that their microphones are muted and that they remain muted throughout the proceedings unless the floor has been yielded to you. To access language interpretation, kindly select your desired language from the menu at the bottom of your Zoom screen. When you speak, kindly ensure that your channel is set to the language in which you are speaking to avoid channel overlap with interpretation. As there's often a time lag between sound transmission of the language of the speaker and interpretation, kindly be patient and bear with unavoidable delays in interpretation. Please wait for a couple of seconds before concluding that there's no interpretation. Should you be disconnected from the proceedings for any reason, kindly contact the IT host, Mr. Etwell, for assistance. You may contact him through the private chat link. Should you encounter any challenge with respect to interpretation, again, please use the chat link to communicate this. The IT help team will immediately assist you to reconnect to the proceedings. Kindly also ensure that multiple devices connected to these proceedings are not active at the same time in the same room. And kindly accept our apologies in advance for any technical mishaps that may have been overlooked or beyond our control. Let me now take you through the order of proceedings. First, we will have a statement by the spokesperson of the NGO Forum. This will be followed by a statement by the representative of the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions. Then we will hear a pre-recorded statement of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. After that, we will have a statement by the representative of the chairperson of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. This will be followed by a statement by the president of the African Court on Human and People's Rights. After that, we will have a statement by the representative of state parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. This will be followed by a statement of the chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Finally, the Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology of the African Union Commission will deliver a statement on behalf of His Excellency, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, and will declare the 67th Ordinary Session open. At this point, this item will bring us to the end of the ceremony. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is my pleasure now to call upon the spokesperson of the NGO Forum, Mrs. Hannah Foster, to make a statement on behalf of NGOs. Madam Foster, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair of the occasion, for giving me the floor. Your Excellency, Professor Sarah Anyang Agbo, Commissioner for Science and Technology, representing the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Honorable Dr. Solomon Ayele Derso, Chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Honorable Vice Chair, Honorable Remingoy Lumbu, and members of the African Commission, Honorable Minister of Justice, Honorable Dauda Jallo, my Lord, Honorable Justice Sylvain Ore, President of the Court, Madam Chairperson, with your kind permission, I beg to stand on existing protocol, and I wish to say that all protocols duly and respectfully observed. On behalf of my colleagues of the Forum on the Participation of NGOs in the 67th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, It is indeed an honor and a privilege as spokesperson to deliver this statement on this auspicious occasion. Allow me at the onset to acknowledge and thank the Honorable Chairperson, Dr. Solomon Ayele-Deso, and members of the African Commission for affording us this opportunity. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in the continuing predicament brought on by the pandemic, COVID-19, the Forum on the Participation of NGOs in the 67th Ordinary Session of the African Commission was held virtually and was organized and facilitated by the Secretariat of the Forum, the African Center for Democracy and Human Rights Studies, from the 9th to 11th November. It is worthy to note that the turnout at the forum was healthy and participation was reflective of the mutual and professional interest in the work of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which has led to the adoption of commendable outcomes. Over 400 representatives registered, while over 140 representatives from 39 African countries, including participants from Europe, North Africa, were able to connect and participate during the 3 days. In the words of the representative of the Ministry of Justice, Mamadou Saliou Sow, reiterated the fact that the challenges posed by COVID-19 has occupied most, if not all, countries around the world, to the extent that Africa cannot afford to take a backseat under the circumstances. Measures aimed at reducing infection and death rates, as well as mitigate the effects of the crisis, has greatly affected lives and livelihoods, like sectors of the economy, exposed the deficiency of the healthcare systems, and further exposed the most vulnerable of the populace to the ills of hunger, poverty, and deprivation in the communities. It was observed that there is a rise of anti-human rights and democratic forces which lingered to take advantage of the crisis to further assert authority or tighten the hold on traumatized citizenry. The human rights situation of the forum, the human rights situation in Africa was reviewed and in response to COVID. Whilst the African Union Constitutive Act aspires to build a unified, peaceful, and prosperous Africa, we also noted that Agenda 2063 consolidates this, and it is hoped that it will usher in the Africa we want. However, with the continuing pandemic, which is ravaging the continent, all hands need to be on deck to squarely confront this monster that has most, if not all, countries on their feet. The forum therefore highlighted that despite the ongoing struggles to address COVID-19, Africa continues to experience human rights violations. The recent human rights issues include the NSAS movement in Nigeria against police brutality, the recent massacres in Ethiopia with mootings of civil war, the post-electoral chaos in Ivory Coast, Mali, and Guinea, the ongoing civil unrest in Cameroon, among others, the lockdown and arrest of human rights defenders in Algeria, Egypt, and Tunisia, interference of by the judiciary in Malawi, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe. Corruption persists in Africa and is a major issue, especially in the days of this pandemic. Mismanagement and lack of accountability by public officials for funds made available for the pandemic have proved elusive in many African countries. It was stated that 40% of the funds during the Ebola outbreak were unaccounted for. And we therefore urge the Commission to call on governments to review existing legislations to ensure accountability and appropriate punishment for perpetrators. We also saw the rise in anti-terrorism laws, which is used to crack down on protesters. During COVID-19, responses from civil society have further demonstrated their determination, innovation, and resilience. And we have also, studies have shown that the civic space health is something that a lot more has to be done. 46 African countries have introduced legal measures in the fight against the pandemic. And it was further revealed that presently 7 countries are still operating declarations of states of emergency, whilst another 7 have declared state of calamity. I want to highlight a few recommendations that came out of the forum, in which we urge the African Commission to call on African states to implement Resolution 449 of the Commission, and to especially review their states of emergency regulations in line with the respect of human rights. We also recommended that the need to address security challenges, which has been aggravated during the pandemic, restricting the movement of migrants, restricting of civic space, increase in domestic and other cases of violations against women. The forum renews its call to the African Union to provide more support to states in their transitional justice programs and to involve and increase the participation of women in post-conflict reconstruction. Restrictions and violations on freedom of expression, association, movement, assembly take prominence during these days of COVID-19. And the forum urges the African Commission to develop standardized tools to facilitate reporting of violations, to enable them to appropriately design and respond to them. The pandemic had further widened the gap between the haves and the have-nots and revealed inequalities and injustices in communities. The forum calls on the African Commission to urge states to put in place measures that ensure effective social service delivery, monitor public-private sector involvement in education, and to adopt measures that favor vulnerable persons. Addressing corruption and ensuring accountability will, among others, strengthen the state's ability to provide quality health infrastructure and provide capacity training and acceptable working conditions for health personnel. The impact of adopted African Commission resolutions on states were also discussed, and we focused on Cameroon and Zimbabwe. It was revealed that whereas some states have taken the Commission seriously, there have been some progress made by others. From 2018 to date, a number of resolutions, 3 were made on Cameroon by the Commission, urging the states to call a dialogue of national unity, the establishment of an independent commission to conduct investigations on allegations, and requested for a fact-finding mission to the state. Unfortunately, only the dialogue was held, while other recommendations are still pending. The need to work with other human rights bodies, and in this case, collaboration between the African Commission and the UN, was very helpful in getting some degree of implementation. During the forum, we also launched for the first time the maiden launch of the African Human Rights Report 2017, 2018, and 2019, which comprised of the reports that have been prepared by the focal points, the sub-regional focal points. And we believe that will be the first of many publications, joint publications from the forum. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, participants noted and congratulated the African Commission for all the gains they have made, and particularly for being the first AU organ to issue a series of press releases drawing attention to the existence of COVID-19 and urging the need to adopt a human rights approach in response to the pandemic since February 2020. As members of civil society, we continue to pledge our support for the work of Africa's premier human rights institution. We continue to urge as many of our participants and their constituencies to apply for observer status to enable them play their role and benefit from the access provided. In conclusion, the forum wishes to extend its sincere appreciation to all our partners and supporters who have supported the forum, the organization of the forum, under the constraints that which we all are experiencing in this time. Your Excellencies, Honorable Chairperson and members of the African Commission, distinguished guests, on behalf of the participants of the forum, of NGOs to the 67th session, I extend to you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Vice Chairperson of the Commission, and each commissioner of this august body, our best wishes for a successful session. I thank you all for your kind attention.
It's okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Foster, for your statement. I would like at this point now to invite the Vice Chairperson of the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions, Dr. Elasto Hilarious Mugwandi, to deliver a statement. You have the floor. She's still talking. Dr. Mugwadi, please unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic, please.
Am I unmuted now? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, you are.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you. You have the floor.
Or do I have to start all over?
Yeah, yes, please.
Thank you very much. The chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Dr. Solomon Dasso, honorable commissioners and members of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It is with profound honor that I, on behalf of NANRI, address this distinguished gathering of the 67th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Our participation is an affirmation of the commitment of the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions in contributing to the human rights agenda on the continent. Honorable Chairperson, this is a special year for us, the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions, as we have also formally launched the National Human Rights Institutions Forum, which will be held each year ahead of the ordinary sessions of the African Commission. The forums will interrogate the situation of human rights in Africa for a consolidated position on promoting and protecting human rights. The NHRI's forum held virtually from 10 to 12th of November 2020 focused attention on Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Tanzania, and Cameroon. Focusing on the electoral situation of Cote d'Ivoire and Tanzania, the forum noted the disruption of activities of the opposition parties in both countries and interference with the freedom of expression and the right to information. It also discussed the civil unrest in Nigeria resulting from police brutality and the long-standing Anglophone crisis in Cameroon. National human rights institutions in these countries reiterated their commitment to undertake their role and work actively towards ensuring the respect for human rights. Delegates of the forum called on African NHRIs to continually seek to ensure independence and plurality in their establishment and to work with integrity and impartiality. Honorable Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, the participants of the NHRI's forum also launched the NHRI's guide for implementing the African Commission's resolution on protection against human rights violations against persons on the basis of their real or imputed sexual orientation or gender identity, Resolution 275. In a broader perspective, the forum also discussed the state of implementation of the decisions of the regional treaty bodies in selected countries. To enhance NHRI's role and contribution in the work of regional human rights bodies, a human rights mechanisms database for NHRI's engagement with regional treaty bodies was also
It appears as if we may have lost Dr. Mugwadi. IT, can you let us know whether the speaker is connected still?
I think we have lost that participant. I think we've lost them.
Okay. In that case, Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, I would now at this stage invite the pre-recorded statement of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Her Excellency Michelle Bachelet.
to switch over to.
Distinguished Chair, distinguished delegate, I'm honored to speak at this session at a time of unprecedented crisis during which millions of people will look to this body for help. Over the years, my office has valued our partnership across a range of issues. Today, the COVID-19 pandemic and its accompanying recession and socioeconomic impact call for your leadership and guidance. Africa has fared better than other regions in terms of direct medical harms. But other aspects of the pandemic are hitting the continent hard, including sudden sharp falls in remittances, foreign direct investment, commodity prices, and tourism. Estimates indicate that between 90 million and 120 million people will be pushed into extreme poverty in the developing world this year, with close to 300 million facing food insecurity. These severely negative trends could exacerbate tensions and conflict, and their impact on development in every country will be profound. My office has taken steps to help governments and other actors mitigate the impacts of COVID-19 by placing people's rights at the core of all efforts to respond to and recover from the pandemic. We have also strengthened partnership with national human rights mechanisms and civil society groups at the national and grassroots level to help boost their capacity to face this crisis. It is important to acknowledge that many governments, including African governments, have taken strong steps to uphold people's rights. They range from additional investments to ensure access to quality health care in line with the right to health, the release of detainees from crowded facilities at high risk of contagion, the provision of economic and food assistance to vulnerable groups, and other ad hoc measures to expand life-saving social protections. But at the same time, our human rights monitoring has also picked up some dangerous and negative trends. In some cases, the enforcement of emergency measures has involved arbitrary detention and excessive use of force and even killing by police, as well as extortion and theft. We have also witnessed pervasive and unjustified restrictions of the right to freedom of expression and the civic space in general. We have seen unprincipled and unjustifiable attacks on journalists and media outlets, as well as against people such as health workers who report on social media or elsewhere about what they are personally experiencing or witnessing during the pandemic or expressing their critical views. Across every region, and Africa is no exception, we also have reports of rising sexual and gender-based violence, as well as increased stigmatization, discrimination, and hate speech associated with COVID-19. Together, we need to work to push back against these negative trends, which both undermine people's rights and harms any possible recovery from the crisis. We must make sure that the COVID-19 responses and recovery measures contribute to longer-term recovery. Reducing inequality and discrimination, increasing investment in healthcare and social protection for all, empowering people who have been disproportionately affected, such as those living in poverty, women, people with disabilities, and displaced people, and establishing full and meaningful participation in governance for more effective, inclusive responses. I know we can count on the members of this body and the African Union to help governments and peoples across the continent to respond to and recover from COVID-19. I believe we also share concerns about the context of violence, intercommunal tensions, and repression of fundamental rights that has surrounded several recent elections on the African continent. We must strengthen our shared efforts to promote the broadest possible respect for the civic and democratic space. Criticism can be very constructive, and national human rights institutions, civil society, including the media, play the vital role in supporting good governance, sustainable development, and social harmony. All governments should uphold rights to political participation, including the right to peaceful assembly in accordance with international standards, and ensure their exercise without discrimination, fear, or reprisals. My office is committed to continue working with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, now and in the future, to promote the human rights norms and can offer effective solutions to build stronger resilience to shocks and counter despair by preventing social, economic, and political instability. Thank you.
That's okay. Let's see, maybe the...
Our profound appreciation to Her Excellency Madame Bachelet for her statement. Your Excellencies and distinguished participants, I now have the pleasure to invite Honorable Justice Maria Mapani Kawimbe, Deputy Rapporteur of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, to deliver a statement on behalf of the committee. Honorable Kawimbe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Allow me to stand on the protocols that have already been established. And in the interest of time, to directly go into my speech. I would like first to express my deepest gratitude on behalf of the Chairperson of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child to the African Commission for extending this invitation for us to take part in the 67th Ordinary Session of the Commission. Our enhanced collaboration between the Committee and Commission is praiseworthy, and we believe that it can be further strengthened. It is our belief that children's rights can continue to be pushed at the continental level and through collaboration with the African Commission. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the African Charter on the rights and welfare of the child. While commemorating the 30th anniversary, the committee is trying to assess the status of implementation of the Charter through various activities and studies with a view to accentuate priorities for the coming years. The committee notes that there's been several progress achieved by states in the protection of children's rights. And in this regard, some of the positive results include the areas of child mortality, immunization of children, access to education and health services, birth registration, and child participation. However, there's insufficient progress and more work needs to be done in collaboration with stakeholders in terms of child and maternal mortality rates, and considering that the lowest birth registration rate is in Africa. Africa is also confounded with issues of malaria, pneumonia, diarrhea, and other preventable diseases affecting children, which continue to be worrisome. Children's access to education and health services are also hampered by high costs, long distances to schools, and child-insensitive services, among others. Children of our continent also continue to suffer from sexual exploitation, worse forms of child labor, child trafficking, and abuse and mistreatment during migration. The impact of armed conflict and hostilities on children cannot be overemphasized and has resulted in millions of children becoming internally displaced and separated from their parents. In addition, harmful practices like child marriage and female genital mutilation continue to affect children on the continent. More particularly, Madam Chairperson, the COVID-19 pandemic that has affected the world has exacerbated the abuse and neglect of children, which we are trying to address in our work as a committee. Children are being disproportionately affected by the pandemic in so many various spectrums. The pandemic itself has hit so many children in spite of the perception that children are resilient to the virus. The impact of the pandemic and the various measures taken to prevent the spread of the virus have been and affecting children more than any other population group. Their access to children has been compromised, with online education being available only to those in urban areas while depriving those millions of children who are living in rural areas. Homestay measures also expose children to heartbreaking sexual abuse, mostly by family members and persons who they may be familiar with. This also absence or the lack of exposure to a classroom settings exposes them more to child marriages and female genital mutilation. It is also devastating to observe that the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic has affected children in various ways in which they are now being deprived of their access to food and basic health services. It is also reported that during the closure of schools, children have been subjected to a lot of violence, which has also affected their mental health, and as a result, may never be able to play and interact with their peers as they used to be. More devastating is the fact that the mental health of children during the pandemic is one of the most neglected areas, yet its impact on children is severe. Considering all these serious issues, the committee developed guiding notes to states on measures that should be taken to mitigate the negative impact on the pandemic on children. And we appeal to all states that measures should be taken in a way that supports children and also sensitive to their current needs. Madam Chairperson, I want to take this opportunity to ask the Commission on the African Commission to give due regard to issues, to continue to give due regard to issues affecting children, particularly at this difficult time during this session that they are hosting, and also in their other engagements that they will have with state parties and also with other stakeholders. As a committee, we continue to look forward the Commission to continue to prioritize these areas. Let me take this opportunity on behalf of the committee to inform you that we'll be organizing a continental workshop in commemoration of the 30th anniversary of our 30th anniversary on the session to be held between 23rd November to 4th December 2020. We hope that the Commission will actively participate in our work, and also we hope that the opportunity will provide us further ways in which we can mark out measures on which to collaborate as we celebrate this important milestone for the Children's Charter. In concluding, I would like to stress that we continue to be open to working with all stakeholders and are eager to engage more with the Commission rather, as we continue to find ways in which to change the fate of our children and address the cross-cutting issues that have been listed above, but are by no means exhaustive, but are quite essential in realizing the rights and welfare and promoting the welfare and dignity of the child in Africa. I thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Justice Maria Mapani Kawimbe, for your statement. I see an intervention from Nanri. You have the floor, sir. We can't hear you. If you could unmute your mic. Nanri?
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I was saying I'm seeking your indulgence for permission to conclude my statement, which was interrupted by the instability of our internet here. If you so permit, can I carry on?
Yes, I'll just give you a minute to do so. Then we must proceed. You have the floor.
Yes, Madam Chair, I was saying at least 26 states in Africa have or will have held elections by end of year 2020. Some of the elections have been chaotic, leading to loss of lives and destruction of property. On this premise of political instability, we cannot deliver Agenda 2063 with such impunity and disregard for the rule of law. We cannot deliver the Africa we want when the sound of industries, businesses, innovations among other activities is muted by the blood to deliver on this big dream when the lives of the youth who have the energy required to drive the social economic growth are sniffed out during peaceful protests. We cannot be proud of a fruitful future when the vulnerable groups are left behind, reeling in pain as a result of unnecessary skirmishes. Madam Chair, in the same breath, NHRI's forum expressed the concerns over the prolonged and protracted armed conflict in the Sahel region, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Mozambique, parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, amongst the others. We acknowledge efforts of the African Union Peace and Security Council. For instance, the AMISOM intervention in Somalia has brought relative calm in neutralizing the Al-Shabaab terror group. On this note, we challenge the African Union Peace and Security Council to invoke the Constitutive Act of the African Union and take appropriate measures in consultation with the states in question and resolve the conflicts. Madam Chair, we call upon the African Commission to encourage member states to enforce all national and regional human rights frameworks. It is also important for member states in partnership with other actors like NHRIs to trigger and sustain institutional reforms, including transforming police forces into services. The respect for the independence of institutions such as NHRIs, the judicial systems, and the parliament cannot be overemphasized. Madam Chair, as I conclude, we request member states to engage all the national and international stakeholders in the planning and the implementation of the socio-economic recovery plans from the COVID-19 crisis and prioritize inclusive financial and the technical contributions for sustainable African development. I wish to thank you, Madam Chair, and wish you all fruitful deliberations. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mogwadi, for your statement. It is now my pleasure to invite the President of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, Honorable Justice Sylvain Ore, to make his statement. Justice Ore, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Dr. Solomon Ayele, président de la honorable commissaire, membre de la Commission africaine, mesdames et messieurs distingués représentants, Madame Chair, secrétaire exécutive Lidiwe Kumalo, mesdames et messieurs, en vos rangs respectifs. Je prends la parole devant cette auguste assemblée. Excuse me, let me switch in French because I can hear the interpreter. Au moment donc où je prends la parole devant cette auguste assemblée, je voudrais tout d'abord, au nom de tous mes collègues juges et au mien personnel, adresser à la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples notre soutien et nos vives félicitations pour son immense travail de protection et de promotion des droits de l'homme sur notre continent. Et surtout, pour tous les efforts et l'engagement dont elle fait preuve cette année 2020 pour maintenir la garde en dépit des nombreuses restrictions que nous impose la situation et les conditions sanitaires liées à la persistance de la pandémie de la COVID-19. Mesdames et messieurs, la situation des droits de l'homme, qui n'était pas très enviable, a régressé d'un cran. Et celle des groupes vulnérables, particulièrement, se retrouve dans une impasse difficile à évaluer. Le déficit humanitaire est bien palpable et les droits de l'homme que nous sommes appelés à défendre et à promouvoir sont mis à rude épreuve. Face à ces nombreux défis, donc, notre rôle en tant qu'organe ou institution de protection et de promotion des droits de l'homme et des peuples est plus que crucial. À cet égard, il me plaît de souligner que la coopération et la collaboration étroite entre les États, les organes de l'Union africaine ayant un mandat en droits de l'homme, les organisations non gouvernementales et les institutions nationales des droits de l'homme sont un impératif auquel nul ne peut prétendre se soustraire. L'efficacité des stratégies et des moyens à mettre en œuvre est aussi à ce prix. Aussi, point n'est besoin de redire qu'individuellement ou collectivement, la Cour et la Commission sont appelés à œuvrer ensemble pour la même cause, celle du respect et de la promotion des droits de l'homme et des peuples. C'est pourquoi je voudrais nous inviter à mettre tout en œuvre pour consolider et rendre plus agissants les rapports de complémentarité entre la Cour et la Commission, surtout sur le plan de la protection des droits de l'homme, dans l'esprit des dispositions du protocole portant création de la Cour africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples. L'adoption récente de nos règlements intérieurs respectifs nous ouvre indubitablement la voie de la consolidation de notre complémentarité. Il nous revient également de savoir compter sur la coopération de tous ceux qui, de près ou de loin, œuvrent pour la cause des droits de l'homme, afin de pouvoir espérer la pleine réalisation des missions qui nous sont assignées. Notre mission ne saurait se limiter à la constatation des violations des droits de l'homme, aux droits de l'homme, à dire le droit, à formuler des recommandations ou à ordonner des réparations. Car les procédures devant les organes que nous représentons n'auront d'intérêt pour les peuples africains si nos arrêts, nos ordonnances et recommandations trouvent leur pleine exécution. Aussi, saisissons-nous cette tribune pour en appeler à la coopération de toutes les parties prenantes, dont je mentionnerai en premier les États membres et ensuite les institutions nationales des droits de l'homme, ainsi que les ONG, dont le lobbying et le plaidoyer seront d'un apport inestimable. C'est ensemble que nous pourrions faire progresser de façon significative les droits de l'homme et les droits des peuples en Afrique. Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs, l'agenda de cette 67e session ordinaire est dense et augure de nombreuses avancées dans la mise en œuvre de l'architecture africaine des droits de l'homme. Je voudrais donc terminer mon propos en réitérant à la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples notre solidarité et nos vœux de plein succès à ces travaux. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Honorable Justice Ore, for your statement. It is now my singular honor to invite Honorable Dauda Jallow, Attorney General and Minister of Justice of the Republic of the Gambia, to deliver a statement on behalf of state parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Allow me also to recognize all the protocols and dignitaries present here. Good morning to you all. I am deeply honored to deliver this statement on behalf of member states of the African Union. I avail myself this opportunity to extend to you fraternal greetings and best wishes from His Excellency, the President of the Gambia, President Adama Barrow, the government and the people of the Gambia. On behalf of the member states, I also wish to express our appreciation to the Commission for rising up to the most daunting health challenge of our time by initiating virtual platform for the 66th and the 67th ordinary sessions. The importance of these sessions cannot be overemphasized, as it offers an auspicious opportunity for participating states to share with the Commission their achievements and constraints in our progressive march towards the fulfillment or full realization of respect and protection of human rights in our African continent. Your Excellency, the session of the Commission are struggling with the negative impact in early February, followed by Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, with most of the cases identified as imported from outside of the continent. Today, 9 months on, Africa is faced with more than 1 million COVID-19 cases and close to 50,000 deaths. Most African governments responded to the fight against the pandemic by declaring state of emergency, instituting curfews and partial lockdowns, implementing measures to encourage social distancing, focused on border and travel restrictions, school closures, and bans on large gatherings. Although African governments took the lead in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, we cannot overlook the overwhelming support of our development partners, non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations, individual volunteers as manifested since the outbreak in February 2020. Your Excellencies, distinguished of November 9, 2020, the Gambia recorded a total of 3,696 COVID-19 cases. 3,500 have recovered in the spread of the virus. The restrictions, the essential services provided by some comes out to hello, we experience might be hard now. Madam Chairperson, we experiencing a little bit of a hitch. Have you been heard?
Yes, we can now hear you. You can proceed.
Okay. As part of its preventive measures, the government declared a state of public emergency at different times between March and September 2020 in order to restrict the movement of people and to confirm the spread of the virus. Notwithstanding the restrictions, the essential services provided by the banks, petrol station traders, vendors in food, basic commodities, in the market, supermarkets, and corner shops were allowed to operate. Recognizing the urgent need for national response to both the health and socio-economic crisis resulting from the losses in productivity and remittance to the Gambian households, the government conducted a thorough review exercise and allocated about $800 million to support the deserving households countrywide. To this end, between April and May 2020, the government has equitably shared more than 230,000 bags of rice, 230,000 bags of sugar, 148,000 liters of cooking oil to 84% of the country's vulnerable households as part of its food relief to the population. As part of efforts to prevent the spread of the virus in our prisons, the government took proactive steps to decongest the prisons by pardoning more than 120 prisoners and granting court bails to 100 remand prisoners. Additionally, the judiciary introduced a virtual court system to hear applications during the pandemic. A new draft constitution was produced by the Constitutional Review Commission, following an extensive consultation nationwide with Gambian nationals in the as well as sequentially submitted of all political parties has been initiated with a view to building consensus on all the contentious issues with a view to resubmitting the draft to the National Assembly. The Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission, which is currently underway, has submitted its interim report in November 2019, and we await its final conclusions in the early part of 2021. The government is already preparing in earnest for post-TRRC activities, and a multi-sectoral task force or working group will soon be constituted to coordinate that process. As part of our legislative reform agenda, a number of bills have been introduced to the National Assembly for enactment. These include Criminal Offences Bill and Criminal Procedure Bill, which seeks to radically transform our criminal justice system to bring it in line with modern criminal justice norms and practices. Other bills that are already being considered by the National Assembly or will be introduced pretty soon include the Prohibition of Torture Bill, which will criminalize acts of torture for the first time in the Gambia. The International Crimes Bill to domesticate all Rome Statute commitments to crimes like genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Access to Information Bill, Anti-Corruption Bill, and various other amendments of various laws to remove discriminatory clauses against women in our statutes. In preparation for the next cycle of national elections from December 2021, a review of Elections Act has been carried out following consultations with the Independent Electoral Commission and stakeholders. The election bill will be tabled before the National Assembly during this December session. You will recall that Gambia inaugurated the National Human Rights Commission for the first time in its history on the 13th of February 2018. The commission is now fully operational, and in April 2020, the commission released its annual report highlighting its activities in 2019. The poor conditions of prisons, detention facilities, the caste system in the upper river region of the country, sand mining, the right of freedom of assembly and or protest, the freedom of the press or workplace policies protecting women were part of the activities detailed in addition to a series of recommendations the Commission have made. Other reports relating to the following matters were also made available by the Human Rights Commission: monitoring of prisons and detention facilities, advisory note on sexual harassment laws in the Gambia, advisory note on the right of freedom of association and assembly. As part of its contribution to the COVID-19 pandemic measure, the Commission preferred advice to the government on decongesting the prisons and detention centers to minimize the risk of contracting the virus in prison. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, excuse me. Our continent continues to make speedy progress and development in the promotion and protection of human rights. Some states have adopted laws to fulfill their human rights obligations under various regional and international instruments, and others have adopted various strategies to implement the mechanisms for the establishment of institutions for the promotion and protection of human rights. Advances in democratic governance, significant reduction in armed conflicts, and progress towards integration have also been made on the continent. These are all remarkable achievements that need to be encouraged for the benefit of the people of the continent. However, we continue to face in some parts of the continent governance deficits, corruption, threats posed by terrorism, conflicts between herders and farmers, insurgencies, inadequate resources and capacity, among other challenges, continue to make our active efforts in effectively addressing human rights concerns of our people more difficult. Therefore, we must remain vigilant and be open to new and innovative ways and ideas of addressing these difficult challenges. It is only by working together as states with the ultimate objective of lifting our people out of poverty and recognizing their inalienable rights to freedom, justice, and pursuit of happiness that we shall become truly proud of ourselves as their servants. The Africa we want, as envisaged under Agenda 2023, is complete transformation of our continent to an integrated, peaceful, and prosperous Africa. Eradicating all wars, civil civil conflicts, violent conflicts, sexual and gender-based violence, and preventing genocide is a commitment we made under the scheme, Silencing the Guns by 2020. We must therefore be alive to our responsibility to rid the continent from unnecessary wars and conflicts. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we continue to call on member states to take our reporting obligations to the Commission very seriously and act on their decisions and recommendations with speed, bearing in mind that the work of the Commission is extremely challenging. We must continue to strengthen the Commission and give it the full support it requires from us to carry out its mandate for the benefit of our people. In conclusion, Madam Chairperson, allow me to remind all those present here today that our contributions as governments, national human rights institutions, non-governmental organizations, and all other stakeholders working in the human rights arena are indeed very important towards ensuring effective promotion and protection of human rights of our people. This forum of the African Commission is therefore the right place to discuss fundamental issues of mutual concern to the stakeholders. On that note, I would like to thank all stakeholders present at this 67th session for their commitment in the advancement of human rights in Africa. On behalf of all the states of the African Union, I wish you well and very productive and fruitful deliberation over the next few days. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your statement. With honor and pleasure, I now invite the chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Honorable Solomon Ayele Deso, to deliver his statement.
Thank you very much, Madam Acting Secretary General of the African Commission, for the floor. I would like to stand on existing protocol and extend my respectful greetings to all excellencies, colleagues, members of the Commission, and representatives of sister human rights bodies, national human rights institutions, and civil society organizations. All and Commissioner for the Commissioner representing the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency, you are very welcome. I am pleased to welcome all of you to this 67th organization of the African Commission, which we conduct once again virtually on account of the COVID-19 pandemic. My apologies. Certainly, this may affect the conduct of the proceedings, as internet connectivity and participation in the proceedings is subject to various intervening factors. However, the continuity of the work of the Commission is critical, more so in a time of crisis during which the demand for promotion and protection of human and people's rights is more pressing than usual. For disruptions that may arise in the course of our proceedings, I wish to join in requesting the kind understanding of all participants. As I note the drawbacks of this format of our session, I am very much mindful, in particular, that there are many fellow Africans who lack access to such an alternative platform for carrying out their activities, make ends meet, or participate in schooling activities. We have come to recognize in the context of this pandemic that access to the internet is central to the enjoyment of various rights, including access to information, the right to education, freedom of expression, the right to work, and participation in public life. Lack of access to the internet or its deprivation, or the phenomena known as the digital divide, leads to complete exclusion of large segments of society from the enjoyment of these and other fundamental rights, leading to the deepening of inequalities. Even without the pandemic, the importance of access to the internet is expected to exponentially increase, and there is urgent need for us in the human rights community to campaign for and articulate a human rights case for ensuring that the pervasive lack of access to the internet on our continent constitutes a serious impediment for the protection and enjoyment of human and people's rights, a case for the right to access to the internet for all. Excellencies, fellow Africans, sisters and brothers, as we look back on the year 2020, we are reminded of the things that matter the most in life. One of these is living a life free from the threat of disease. With the advent of COVID-19, we have been reminded why we shouldn't take being healthy for granted. Equally, we have been reminded that the health of each of us is intrinsically tied to the health of the public, that the health of the most well-off among us can't be secure if the health of the public, the health of the masses of our people, the most vulnerable among us, is not secure. The right to health and ensuring universal access to health is a condition sine qua non for the safety of all members of society. It is an essential public good in whose protection and provision each member of society has a stake. As underscored in Resolution 449 of our Commission, we can't emphasize enough the importance of this and the need for working towards ensuring the right to life and the right to health, as well as its universal access to all. This is why the Working Group on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights of the Commission, in collaboration with UNAIDS, have initiated a joint study on the right to health and its financing in Africa. As we continue to receive reports of sexual and gender-based violence, attacks against journalists and human rights defenders, including in the context of the pandemic, terrorist violence and armed conflicts in various parts of the continent, one of the other things that matters most we are reminded of is a life free from the threat of violence, freedom from fear. The various threats to freedom from fear are certainly not only manifestations of structural conditions of violence, but also importantly represent an indictment on those entrusted with the responsibility of managing the affairs of our societies. For us at the Commission, as we reflect back on the past year, we wish to note with appreciation the strides we have made. 2020 has been a difficult year, but it has been a year for enhancing and taking to a higher level our relationship with various stakeholders in the spirit of our Commission's motto, human rights, our collective responsibility. Earlier in the year, the Commission issued a joint statement with the Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child on the African Union theme of the year on silencing the guns, underscoring why respect for human and people's rights and the rights of the child is central to silencing the guns. In response to the numerous human rights challenges which have arisen in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Commission has mobilized itself vigorously, rising to the challenge of the moment, elevating its monitoring and response. It issued a total of 15 press statements relating to various human rights issues arising or related to the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, the Commission engaged with the structures and the wider African Union system, as well as the wider human rights system, on joint action in response to the pandemic, including a joint statement that I made with Her Excellency Michelle Bachelet, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, a briefing later submitted to the African Union Chairperson, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, on making human rights a key pillar of the continental response to COVID-19, a statement on corruption arising in response to COVID-19 issued jointly with the African Union Advisory Board on Corruption. As part of enhancing our engagement with the states parties in the promotion and protection of human rights, this season has also registered enhanced engagement, as illustrated by our consultative meeting with the African Union Peace and Security last October, and the high-level event held on 21 October, during which President Masisi of Botswana delivered the African Human Rights Day keynote lecture. I wish in this context to express our sincere appreciation and gratitude to President Masisi for gracing the African Human Rights Day commemoration with delivering his keynote lecture. We have also supported the convening of the Forum of African National Human Rights Commissions. I am very delighted and commend NANRI for the launch of this forum earlier this week as an important platform that fits the work and assessment of national human rights commissions on the state of human rights in Africa into the session of the African Commission, hence elevating our collaboration a notch higher. As I highlight some of the strides we have registered, and despite the progress we made, I am very much mindful that there remain major gaps. There remain major gaps between the promise of the African Charter and the delivery on this promise by our Commission. Indeed, if there is one thing that keeps members of the Commission awake at night, it is the fact that there are many situations we are not able to address, many calls which we are unable to respond to timely. This is particularly the case with respect to complaints of alleged violations of human rights filed with the Commission against member states for adjudication through the communications process. We acknowledge that this must be fixed, and the Commission stands to once again to rise to the occasion and address the communications backlog by investing more time and effort on its protection mandate. Excellencies, dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, the fight against COVID-19 is not yet over. I wish to reiterate the call of the Commission in its resolution 449 on human and people's rights as central pillar of successful response to COVID-19 and recovery from its socio-political impacts. It has become clear that the threat that COVID-19 poses to the enjoyment of the rights to health, safety, and life will be removed only when a COVID-19 vaccine is found, manufactured, and made available to all. In this respect, as well, I wish to reiterate the call of Resolution 449 of our Commission for the African Union to develop a strategy for the achievement of independence in the production and distribution of vaccines, as well as other critical healthcare supplies on the continent. Furthermore, the African Union should lead the call for the waiver of relevant international trade rules, including intellectual property rights regulations, so that COVID-19 prevention and treatment medical products and vaccine in particular can be produced on the continent generically and more easily accessed by all people during this pandemic. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the course of 2020, it has become clear that the overall health impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the African continent may be less than in other parts of the world. But we are extremely concerned by the devastating socioeconomic and other consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, with far-reaching implications, as millions of people are pushed to extreme poverty, millions others lose their jobs or livelihoods, and many more face hunger and starvation. In many ways, the COVID-19 pandemic has served to amplify and reinforce the defining human rights issues of our time: massive poverty, widening inequality, gender oppression, the violence of racism, the democratic governance deficit, and the climate emergency. 2020 is also a year that has shown us why a business as usual approach to the political, social, economic, and environmental governance of our societies doesn't work and can't deliver. That we can't continue to neglect the critical issues of pervasive poverty, the lack of access to education, lack of access to water, lack of access to basic health care, lack of access to decent housing. It doesn't have to take an emergency for our countries, our states, to deliver these basic necessities, for our people to come and say, we thank the virus for the water. We can't continue to neglect the critical issue of deepening inequality. We can't continue to rely on a neoliberal economic development model that emphasizes GDP growth, rewarding more benefits for the wealthy while keeping the poor poorer. We can't continue to neglect the critical issue of gender oppression and the abuse of the dignity and rights of women and girls. Other extreme weather events, including flooding in East, Central, and Western Africa, the locust invasion in the Horn of Africa, show we can't continue to be complacent about the existential threat that the climate emergency poses on our societies, with devastating consequences, particularly for the most vulnerable. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Africans, since the last ordinary session of the Commission, this Commission has been deeply concerned and seized with a number of alarming and serious human rights challenges, which arose in various contexts. The Commission has been following the expression of public outrage about the human rights violations by and the calls for the dissolution of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad of the Nigerian police. The Commission is concerned that in the aftermath of the protests, while the Commission welcomes the decision of the Nigerian government to dissolve SARS, we are concerned that in the aftermath of the protests and following the exploitation of the situation by criminal actors and other opportunist elements, there have been reports of an escalation of threats against human rights defenders, the organizers of the protests, including reported coercion, intimidation, resulting in some human rights defenders going into hiding for fear of reprisals. The Commission is further concerned by human rights consequences related to electoral contestations which were experienced in Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, which were characterized by post-election violence, including leading to the death of civilians and a deterioration of the human rights situation. We are also concerned by reports of allegation of intimidation and attacks in Tanzania following the elections in October. The Commission during the intercession period also strongly condemned the unconstitutional change of government in Mali, while recognizing the need for addressing the governance and human rights deficits that created the conditions for the coup. The Commission urged the constitutional authorities in Mali to abide by the standards of the African Charter and ensure that conditions are created for addressing the governance issues in Mali and for convening free, fair elections at the end of the 18-month period for full restoration of constitutional order. Ladies and gentlemen, we are further concerned by the ongoing situation of insecurity and violence in various parts of the continent, including in crisis situations. The Commission remains actively seized of the human rights situation in Cameroon and with distrust to learn of the tragedy that occurred on 24 October in Kumba, where at least 6 students aged 9 to 12 were killed when their schools were attacked. Several others were wounded. The Commission is deeply saddened by this unnecessary and gratuitous use of violence targeting civilians and basic service delivery infrastructure such as schools, all of which underscore the imperative for urgent resolution of the festering conflict in the country. The Commission was disturbed to learn of the massacre of 220 civilians by armed groups in the South Kivu province of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Commission also learned with dismay of an attack perpetrated by an armed group of about 500 men in West Darfur, Sudan, which resulted in the death of people and injury of others. The Commission also received with deep distress reports of murder, beheading, and kidnappings of civilians, including women and children, in the Cabo Delgado region of Mozambique by armed terrorist groups. The Commission condemns these acts of violence in the strongest terms and urges the governments of these countries to take all steps to ascertain the circumstances of these massacres through independent investigations and to ensure that perpetrators are held accountable, victims receive justice, and the root causes of these conflicts are addressed. The Commission is also concerned about the situation in Ethiopia, which has witnessed major incidents of violence targeting civilians and a military confrontation in the Tigray region, which disturbingly has started to lead to major acts of violence against civilians, as recent reports highlighted. Ethnic-based profiling, arrest of journalists, a humanitarian crisis with thousands of people forced to flee into neighboring Sudan, spike in hate speech, and an epidemic of fake news and misinformation. making an already difficult situation much more difficult. The Commission urged that human rights and international humanitarian law are fully respected without exception. And it underscores the imperative for ensuring unhindered humanitarian access to those who need humanitarian assistance. Colleagues, friends, fellow Africans, as you are all aware, the EU's campaign on silencing the guns in Africa by 2020 aims to achieve a conflict-free Africa, aims to achieve freedom from fear. As an agenda for freeing people from violence or its threats, this agenda is essentially a human rights agenda. Without progress for achieving this agenda, as the examples that I have mentioned illustrate, the death, destruction, displacement, and suffering of war and conflict will continue. Without progress for this agenda, sexual and gender-based violence, which constitute a war on women, with alarming statistics on violence against women in countries across the continent, will continue to permeate our societies. Without progress on this agenda, none of the development frameworks of our continent, including the African Free Trade Area and the other development agendas, can be realized. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, not everything is gloom and doom in Africa. There are also positive developments, which we should cherish and celebrate. It has been during this period that we have witnessed major fighting in Libya stalemating, and importantly, the peace process in that country taking off the ground with the signing of the ceasefire agreement by the conflict parties last month and the convening of the political negotiation for peace in Libya, giving a flicker of hope for peace in that country. We urge the conflict parties to abide by the terms of the ceasefire agreement and to sustain this flickering hope for peace in Libya. We also welcome the progress being made in the situation in Sudan, most notably the signing of peace agreements for ending the conflicts in Darfur, South Kordofan, and Blue Nile. The long overdue removal of Sudan from the United States list of the state sponsors of terrorism is also another welcome development. As much as we express our concern in backslides in democratic governance witnessed in some of the elections held in some countries, we celebrate with commendation the democratic transfer of power in the Republic of Seychelles from the ruling party that led the country for long to the opposition party after a free and fair election. We congratulate the people of Seychelles. This experience offers us an important example that peaceful and democratic transfer of power is possible. It must and can be the norm on our continent. I also wish to acknowledge and commend the work of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, the work of the African Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, the work of national human rights institutions. The work of national human rights institutions in particular, because they have shown the critical importance of their role. In this respect, I wish to pay tribute to the commissions in Chad and Niger for investigating and reporting on violations perpetrated in the context of counter-terrorism operations in those countries, to the commissions in Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Kenya, among others, for their investigation and reporting on various human rights issues, including excessive use of force, arbitrary arrest, and others in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. I also wish to acknowledge the distinguished role of NGOs, social justice movements, human rights defenders, and journalists for their service, which they continue to deliver, often by putting their freedom and lives on the line. Last but not least, I wish to pay respect to ordinary citizens on the continent who, despite very difficult social, economic, and political conditions, seek to overcome their conditions and achieve a life of dignity. I express my solidarity with the youth of our continent, in particular, who, through exercising their freedom of assembly by staging peaceful protests, are leading the struggle for social justice on our continent, for equality and dignity, as manifested in the June 5 protest movement in Mali and the recent End SARS protests in Nigeria. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of fellow commissioners, members of the Commission, I wish to extend our invitation for your active participation in the proceedings of this 67th ordinary session for delivering on the motto of our Commission, human rights, our collective responsibility. I wish to extend my appreciation to everyone who worked hard once again to make the convening of this virtual session possible. I thank members of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights and my colleagues in the Secretariat for their hard work. I wish us all a very productive session. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson, for your statement. At this juncture, and with great honor, I now invite Her Excellency Professor Sarah Anyang Agbo, Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology of the African Union Commission, to deliver our opening statement on behalf of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, and also then to proceed to formally declare the 67th Ordinary Session open. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much. And Honorable Dauda Jallow, Attorney General and Minister of Justice of the Republic of the Gambia, the Honorable Commissioner Solomon Deso, Chairperson of the African Commission on Human Rights, on Human and People's Rights, Honorable Justice Sylvain Ore, President of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, Honorable Maria Mapani Kawimbe, Member of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, Honorable Commissioners of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Your Excellencies, Ministers and Heads of Delegates of state parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, Excellencies in your different ranks, representatives of the UN agencies, representatives of the African National Human Rights Commission institutions, representatives of the civil society and non-governmental organizations, distinguished guests, colleagues from the African Union Commission, and staff of the African Union institutions with a mandate on human and people's rights, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Dr. Musa Faki Mahamat, I feel greatly honored and privileged to be afforded the opportunity to address this august assembly on this auspicious occasion of the 67th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, taking place virtually despite the challenges faced by COVID-19 pandemic. I wish to begin by congratulating Honorable Commissioner Dr. Solomon Deso, the Chairperson of the Commission, together with all Honorable Commissioners of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, for the diligent manner with which this ordinary session has been organized. I would also like to recognize and thank members of the Secretariat of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights for their hard work and for being the catalyst for the effectiveness of the Commission. I also wish to extend my gratitude to all delegates of member states and other participants for making the time to attend this important session. It is my belief that the deliberations and the outcomes of this ordinary session will go a long way in enhancing the effectiveness and efficiency of the human and people's rights system in Africa, particularly during this time of pandemic crisis. Excellencies, honorables, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights was adopted by the OAU on 27 June 1981, and it entered into force on 21 October 1986. This instrument represents the foundational stone of the African human rights system. It is unique to other regional human rights instruments in that it covers internationally accepted human rights standards while also recognizing unique African values peculiar to our continent. The Charter also provides for civil and political rights, social, economic, and cultural rights, people's and group rights, and all these include duties and responsibilities of the individual in the society. This 67th ordinary session of the ACHPR is taking place as our continent and the entire world are grappling with a serious crisis of COVID-19. Therefore, it is an opportunity to consolidate on the gains made so far in reposing to this pandemic, but most importantly, to harp on the responsibility of African Union member states in upholding the human rights of their citizens without any discrimination or abuses. Listening to previous speakers, we have seen the various ways by which many people's rights have been violated. So the session is also an opportunity to further remind all African Union member states on the need to develop strategic response to COVID-19 guided by the principles enshrined in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Significantly, it is also important to note that this ordinary session is taking place following the commemoration of the African Human Rights Day, which was held on 21st October 2020. This year, the celebration took place under the theme, Silencing the Guns and Deepening the Culture of Human and People's Rights, the Opportunities and Challenges of COVID-19 in Africa, which is specially crafted to promote the AU's agenda of silencing the guns in Africa, bearing in mind the ongoing challenges of COVID-19 pandemic, and to maximizing every opportunities therein to deepen the culture of human and people's rights in Africa. Therefore, this year's celebration was meant to, among other things, consolidate on the gains made so far in silencing the guns in Africa, but most importantly, to harp on the responsibility of African Union member states to bring peace and tranquility in each and every part of the continent. This is very important for us to be able to achieve the Africa we want. Excellencies, honorables, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the African continent has witnessed decades of numerous human rights challenges resulting from a diverse range of factors, which include, among others, war, poverty, corruption, autocratic governance, and exclusion of marginalized groups. Therefore, as we proceed with the implementation of the 10-year action plan that will support our member states to fulfill their human rights obligations, it is important that we redouble our efforts to ensure that the African people enjoy the right to food, the right to safe water and sanitation, the right to health, the right to housing, the right to education, the right to decent clothing, the right to clean environment, to mention a few. Honorable Solomon Ayele also made a lot of emphasis on these aspects of human life that can promote dignity and honor to every citizen of the African continent. The promotion and protection of human and people's rights is indeed a collective responsibility. However, it is important to recognize the challenges faced by all African member states during this time of COVID-19 pandemic. This requires our collective resolve to reflect on how best to advance rights that address underdevelopment, poverty, inequality, marginalization, and exclusion on our continent as we make concerted efforts towards effective implementation of Agenda 2063 for the Africa we want and the Africa we deserve. Significantly, the African Union vision of a peaceful, united, and prosperous Africa set out in Agenda 2063 can only be achieved through sound planning and results-oriented policies and actions, can only be achieved when peace reigns in words and in deeds. The realization of our common vision of a united and prosperous Africa, anchored on a culture of human rights as envisaged by Agenda 2063 requires our common resolve. Our gathering here today is evidence of our collective dedication and commitment to this goal. Yes, we can't keep silent and be complacent, and human rights must be respected. We can't continue to neglect the critical issue of gender and abuse of women. We cannot continue to be complacent with climate change dynamics and the threat of hunger. Excellencies, honorables, distinguished participants, posterities will ask us questions if we do not concretely act on human rights situation. We are called to action that can mitigate the question of human rights violation and gruesome acts meted out to innocent citizens of our beloved continent. This is the vision of the team of the African Union silencing the guns. I wish to seize this opportunity to call on all African Union member states to cooperate with all the organs that they put in place, such as the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, the African Court on Human and People's Rights, the African Union Board Against Corruption, and other relevant bodies to ensure that human rights and dignity are fully reinforced across the continent. In this regard, member states are urged to submit regular reports to those institutions they have put in place so as to facilitate the smooth implementation of the human rights agenda, thus upholding the values and tenets enshrined in our African shared valued instruments. As the African Commission on Human and People's Rights is preparing itself during this session to take actions and to make recommendations for the promotion and protection of human and people's rights in Africa, I wish to seek the support of its members to explore the possibility of issuing a set of guidance that will assist our member states to have a human rights approach in responding to COVID-19. Once again, I would like on behalf of the African Union Commission to express our appreciation to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights for taking the initiative to organize this important gathering and invite you to contribute your ideas and suggestions on how we can move forward together and make this session a success. Having said this, on behalf of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Dr. Musa Faki Mahamat, I declare the 67th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights open. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Commissioner, for delivering the statement of His Excellency, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, and also for opening and declaring the 67th Ordinary Session of the Commission today. This brings us, Your Excellencies, and all participants to the end of our opening ceremony. I thank you for all your patience and understanding, particularly where there have been technical disruptions and overruns in terms of time. At this point, all dignitaries, delegates, and participants will observe a health break of 15 minutes. During this break, the Commission and its staff will retreat into a private session, a brief private session. A special link will be sent to the Commission and its staff for purposes of the private session. The rest of the delegates, Excellencies, the public session will resume at 12 noon GMT. Please use the same link that you used initially to join this opening ceremony for purposes of joining the public session. We thank you for your attendance of this opening ceremony, and we look forward to your attendance of the public session. Kindly join us at 12 noon GMT. We may now all log off this program, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.